The relationship between papal authority and royal power was complex, intertwined throughout the long European Middle Ages. The balance of power shifted back and forth, shaping a dual political system in which both the Church and the monarchy ruled together. In 751, Pepin the Short, the mayor of the Palace of the Franks, usurped the throne with the support of the Pope, establishing the Carolingian dynasty. In return, Pepin donated a portion of central Italy to the Pope, leading to the creation of the Papal States, a historical event known as the Donation of Pepin. By crowning Pepin, the Pope came to believe that he held the authority to appoint or depose kings, laying the foundation for future conflicts between papal and royal power. In 800, Pope Leo III placed a crown upon the head of Charlemagne as he prayed, proclaiming him Emperor of the Romans. This act set a precedent for popes crowning emperors, further reinforcing the ancient principle of divine right of kings. From that point forward, every European emperor required formal coronation by the Pope to be considered legitimate. After Charlemagne's death, his grandsons divided his empire into 3 kingdoms, forming East, West, and Middle Francia. Over time, Middle Francia was gradually absorbed by the East and West, giving rise to the early forms of France and Germany. In 961, Otto I, King of Germany, led his army into Italy to help the Pope escape the control of Berengar, the ruler of Rome at the time. In gratitude, the Pope crowned Otto I as Emperor of the Roman Empire. This established a new tradition. Every German king had to travel to Italy and receive coronation by the Pope to be recognized as the legitimate Roman emperor. Without this papal blessing, he would remain merely a king. This tradition continued with Otto's successors, including Otto II, Otto III, and Henry II. However, during this period, papal authority was at a disadvantage. The German kings frequently invaded Italy, deposing and appointing popes at will. As a result, the papacy became little more than a tool for the German monarchs to legitimize their imperial titles. Under Henry III, papal subjugation reached its peak. He deposed 3 popes in rapid succession and personally appointed 3 new ones, effectively making the Pope a vassal of the German emperor. Beyond controlling the papacy, Henry III also wielded the power to appoint and remove bishops across Germany, using this authority to counterbalance the influence of regional princes. Despite his unprecedented control over the Church, Henry III was a devoted supporter of the Cluniac reform movement. From the 10th to 11th centuries, the Cluniac reforms emerged across Western Europe, advocating for asceticism, celibacy, and the purification of the Catholic Church. In addition to promoting monastic discipline, the movement also fiercely opposed the right of secular rulers to appoint bishops and abbots, a practice known as investiture. The rise of the Cluniac movement in Germany laid the groundwork for the investiture controversy and, ultimately, the infamous historical event known as the Humiliation of Canossa. In 1056, Henry III passed away, leaving his 6-year-old son, Henry IV, as his successor. Regency was assumed by his mother, Agnes. Seizing the opportunity presented by the young king's minority, the Roman Curia issued the papal election decree in 1059, which stripped feudal lords of their authority to interfere in papal elections and to appoint members of the College of Cardinals. This decree marked the beginning of the investiture controversy between the Holy Roman Emperor and the Pope. In 1075, Gregory VII, a staunch reformer, became Pope and issued the Dictatus Papae, a document that explicitly outlined papal supremacy and its authority. In it, he proclaimed, "Only the Pope has the power to appoint and remove bishops. Only the Pope has the authority to enact new laws. All rulers must kneel and kiss the Pope's feet. The Pope has the right to depose emperors. The Pope can absolve subjects from their oath of allegiance to an unjust ruler. The Roman Church has never erred and never will. Anyone not in harmony with the Roman Church should not be considered a Christian. The Pope has the right to order subjects to bring charges against their rulers. The Pope himself can never be judged. Toward the end of 1075, Gregory VII issued a stern warning to Henry IV, forbidding him from interfering in the appointment of the Archbishop of Milan. He threatened excommunication if the king ignored his directive. However, having suppressed the Saxon rebellion, Henry IV had temporarily stabilized his rule and chose to disregard the Pope's warning. He proceeded with the appointment of the Archbishop of Milan, leading to a fierce confrontation with the papacy. In 1076, Henry IV took the initiative and struck first. He convened the Synod of Worms, gathering thousands of bishops and priests from Germany and France, where he denounced Gregory VII and declared his papal authority null and void. In response, on February 22, 1076, Gregory VII issued the harshest penalty possible: excommunication. He excommunicated, deposed, and banished Henry IV, stripping him of his rule over Germany and Italy, and absolving his subjects from their oath of allegiance. At first, Henry IV dismissed the Pope's punishment, believing it held little consequence. However, the fragmented feudal landscape of Germany soon turned against him. In October of the same year, at an imperial assembly, the majority of German princes declared that if Henry IV failed to restore his standing with the Church within a year, they would no longer recognize his legitimacy as king. Wasting no time, the princes elected Duke Rudolph of Swabia as the new king of Germany, openly rebelling and launching a fierce war against Henry IV. With his authority crumbling and the common people refusing to support him due to his excommunication, Henry IV faced a rapidly worsening crisis. With both internal strife and external threats mounting, Henry IV was forced to compromise. In 1077, he traveled with his wife and children through the bitter winter to Canossa, where Pope Gregory VII was staying, in a desperate attempt to have his excommunication lifted. After a long and arduous journey, Henry IV and his entourage finally arrived at the fortress of Canossa, perched atop a small hill. Stripping off his cloak, boots, and hat, he donned the simple robes of a penitent monk and stood barefoot outside the castle gates, pleading for forgiveness. However, the Pope remained unmoved, and the fortress gates remained firmly shut. Undeterred, Henry IV continued his penance, standing barefoot in the freezing snow for 3 days and 3 nights. In the end, Gregory VII relented and agreed to meet him. Henry IV knelt before Pope Gregory VII, confessing his sins and presenting a written oath of obedience to the Pope, pleading for the revocation of his excommunication. Gregory VII harshly rebuked Henry IV, listing his many transgressions. One by one, Henry admitted to each of them. Seeing an emperor so utterly humbled before him, the Pope ultimately chose not to push matters to the extreme. He declared Henry forgiven and lifted the excommunication. The Humiliation of Canossa marked a turning point in the balance of power between papal authority and imperial rule. From that moment on, the journey to Canossa became a symbol of disgrace across Western Europe, solidifying the Pope's unprecedented victory over the emperor. However, this humiliation also gave Henry IV the breathing room he needed. He regained the support of the German nobility and clergy, and upon his return to Germany, he quickly stabilized the political situation. As his forces gained the upper hand in the civil war against the rebellious princes, Henry IV launched his response to Canossa. He demanded that Pope Gregory VII excommunicate his rival, Duke Rudolph, and officially recognize him as the rightful emperor. If the Pope refused, Henry IV threatened to install a new pope. Enraged, Gregory VII once again excommunicated Henry IV. However, in 1080, fate took a turn in Henry's favor. Rudolf, the leader of the rebellion, was killed in battle, allowing Henry IV to crush the revolts and secure his rule over Germany. With his kingdom firmly under control, he marched south, leading his army against Rome. In 1084, Henry IV captured the city of Rome, deposed Pope Gregory VII, and installed Clement III as the new pope. Under this new papacy, Henry IV was finally crowned Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. After 7 years of struggle, Henry IV had avenged his humiliation at Canossa. Yet, less than a century later, another German emperor would once again suffer the same fate. A second Humiliation of Canossa. In 1152, Frederick I ascended the throne as King of Germany. He continued the imperial policy of invading Italy and controlling the papacy. In 1154, Frederick I entered Italy at the Pope's invitation to suppress a rebellion. Once the revolt was quelled, Pope Adrian IV, in preparation for Frederick's imperial coronation, demanded that he observe the traditional custom of holding the Pope's stirrup as a gesture of submission. Although tensions arose when Frederick initially refused to perform the traditional act of holding the Pope's stirrup, the dispute was resolved after negotiations. On June 18, 1155, Pope Adrian IV officially crowned Frederick as Holy Roman Emperor in St. Peter's Basilica. However, the ceremony was marred by riots from angry Roman citizens, which were brutally suppressed by imperial forces, resulting in hundreds of deaths. Frederick I would go on to launch 5 more invasions of Italy, but despite his efforts, fierce resistance from the Pope and the Italian League prevented him from securing a decisive victory. During his 5th campaign, the German army suffered a crushing defeat, and Frederick himself was seriously wounded. Left with no alternative, he surrendered. In 1177, Frederick I signed the Treaty of Venice with Pope Alexander III. Under the terms of the treaty, Frederick agreed to return church lands and refrain from interfering in papal affairs. As a symbol of his repentance, he knelt before Pope Alexander III and kissed his feet, a second enactment of the Humiliation of Canossa. After Frederick I's death, imperial power was further weakened. This decline culminated in 1356, when Emperor Charles IV issued the Golden Bull, which formally established a system where 7 prince-electors would choose the emperor. This greatly diminished the emperor's authority, accelerating the fragmentation of the Holy Roman Empire. While England and France were evolving into strong, centralized nation-states under monarchical absolutism, the once mighty Holy Roman Empire degenerated into a loosely connected patchwork of feudal states. Its national strength declined, and its people suffered under the heavy taxation of the Roman Curia. In the end, these consequences were far more devastating than the personal humiliations of Henry IV and Frederick I at Canossa.